Elizabeth Landry is a physician family advocate, certified life coach for physician wives, emergency medicine wife of 20 plus years, mother and founder of the MedCommons, a digital magazine and online community serving physicians, spouses, and partners as they navigate med school, residency, and beyond. Most of her content is for physicians' significant others, but she had a post recently about the 6 traits doctors need to be a great spouse. So we decided to make this an episode. We discussed that. In addition, we also discussed the sacrifices that our significant others make for us in our careers. Turns out it's not all sunshine and roses being married to a physician. There's some really insightful stuff that we cover here, and I think this is a really important episode. Elizabeth Landry founded the MedCommons to address a significant gap in the area of support for physician families and developed this platform to connect med spouses and partners with each other and resources to build a community of friendship, support, and understanding. Elizabeth partners with various individuals and organizations to drive forward the focus on mental well-being of physicians and their families.
Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Doctoring, a practical guide for practicing physicians. Dr. Bradley Block interviews experts in and out of medicine to find out everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. The ideas expressed on this podcast are those of the interviewer and interviewee and do not represent those of their respective employers. And now, here's Dr. Bradley Block.
Elizabeth Landry, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Brad. It's great to be here.
So tell us, what is the MedCommons origin story? How did you start the blog?
The MedCommons has really become a culmination of a few life experiences that I've had. I was working, originally when I met my husband, I was working at a Fortune 50 company here in St. Louis, and who at the time was in his emergency residency, in his emergency medicine residency. And it was pretty clear from the beginning that if and when we got married, that I would need to stay at home with the kids since he would be doing shift work, and they'd need someone with stable hours and some consistency at home. So I understood what I was getting into. I had already had about 8 nieces and nephews at the time, and family was everything to me. So once we began having kids, I stayed at home. So that was kind of the beginning of my story. Fast forward about 17 years and 4 kids later, my oldest daughter was thinking about college and my youngest one was becoming a little bit more independent. And so I knew it was about time that I started thinking about working again. And as much as I loved my previous job, I knew that I didn't want to go back to 9 to 5. I still wanted to be there for my kids and their activities. So I couldn't go back and work in an office. So I'm a natural problem solver. So I began trying to find ways to figure out what I wanted to do next, because I knew that if I didn't make a plan, then it wouldn't happen. And then I'd be stuck and all the kids would be gone, and I would still be where I was. And I didn't want that for myself. So what I didn't realize during that 17 years as I started to kind of figure out what I wanted to do is that I kind of started playing the support role and less of the main character in my own story. And which I didn't realize until later after I'd been working with physician spouses and things, that apparently that's a thing that happens with physician spouses just because of their husband's or spouse's job. And I'll say spouses, but I mean spouses, partners, people in
Oh, I
long-term
misunderstood.
relationships.
I thought you meant with reference to your kids, because that's a revelation that I had once I started having kids, is like, man, I'm not the protagonist in the story anymore. I'm like the protagonist's dad. Like
Right.
I'm not Superman. I'm Pa Kent. Like I'm yeah, so I didn't
Exactly.
I misunderstood what you're saying. So but
No.
probably
So
the
that's
same
a
thing
great
with the kids,
perspective, though.
and then with the with the significant spouse. So can you flesh that out a little bit? Like, what do you mean by not the main character?
Yeah. So, I mean, your perspective is a great perspective because add on your Superman type character and then add someone else to the story that's also supporting you in your role as a physician, plus the kids and their roles and whatever they need to do. And that's sort of how you like fall into the support role is that my life in medicine, my husband's hours were so demanding. He was doing shift work. I don't want to say that it's like being a single mom, but really I couldn't rely on him for any help with transporting kids. If I signed somebody up for something, then I was bearing all of the responsibility because it I couldn't rely on him because if he had shift work to do or if it's not something he didn't have any regular hours that I could rely on him. So so that's interesting your take and how you perceive that is that it's a lot of support role for the physician is to enable physicians to do what they can and how and well, and then also the support role for the kids. So that's a pretty interesting take.
So then how does that tie into MedCommons, right? So that's I think what you're
Sure.
leading into is that like, is that support role, are you going to dovetail that into like, then I was going to also be supportive of other physician spouses and, or
Yeah.
were you saying like in realizing that you know, decided I had all this knowledge and was going to pour that into the Med Commons?
Yeah, so I think
Kind of
a
both.
lot of both. This was a whole process. So, thanks to HGTV, I went through all this process. Like maybe I'd rehab houses or I love wine and I began studying wine and I was going to become a wine guru and took some certifications. And while I loved it, what really led me to the path of the Med Commons is I found something called Ikigai. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Yeah. So, if you never heard of it, "Iki" in Japanese means life, and "gai" describes your value or worth. So, your ikigai is your life's purpose or your bliss, what you wake up in the morning for, what inspires you to get out of bed, things like that. And there's like a whole method that you follow to find your ikigai. But essentially, where all the parts intersect of these different aspects of ikigai is where you find your life purpose. So, like, who doesn't want to find their life's purpose, right? So that's the
Okay, you
problem
don't want to
solver in
tell
me.
that to a bunch of physicians,
Right,
or you're going to end up with a
right.
mass exodus and the healthcare system is going to
Yeah,
collapse. Okay.
yeah,
Guys,
yeah.
don't find your ikigai. Don't
Right,
keep
right.
keep seeing patients.
Yeah, probably. I think that would be a tough road to travel right now after all the
Yeah.
medical training and everything. So yeah, so my ikigai really ended up leading me to a path of service. So what I love and what I'm really great at doing is encouraging others, supporting others, watching them succeed, find their joy, and really being a cheerleader. And like I said before, I'm a natural problem solver. So if I could help other people solve their problems and at the same time then be their cheerleader, then I kind of knew that that was my jam. So that's when I became a certified coach and got into coaching physician spouses because then I helped them kind of get out of the chaos. People like me who had fallen into the support role and kind of find their thing, just like I did. So that was perfect for me. I could stay at home with the kids still and I could help people at the same time. And that was really a win win for me. But, during the process, I, heard from a ton of resident spouses and partners that really needed help and they couldn't afford coaching. So, the general themes were, "I'm just so lonely. I feel like my spouse is at work all the time. I'm scared to move to a new community. I'm in a new community and no one really understands what it's like. And I'm kind of tired of hearing that it must be nice to be married to a doctor because this kind of really sucks." So, I didn't realize that all of this went on because I met my husband in residency and then we stayed in my hometown. So I didn't have to move across the country. I didn't have to leave my job, my community, my friends, my family and then move somewhere with somebody who's gonna be gone 80 hours a week or more. So, and to be honest, I'm not really sure that I would've at the time. I was pretty close to my family and I still am, but not really sure that I would've. So yeah, so I say all the time that, and I'll probably say it 100 times more, that spouses and partners of residents are some of the strongest people that I've ever met. So I guess I knew at the time, it was time to do something for this group of people that are so strong like not helpless at all. And much like me, like natural problem solvers, and they're searching for help and guidance in the community and they just can't find it. So it kind of began by combining my own experiences as a physician spouse and my background with tech and me experiencing coaching and learning from other physician spouses, and then my desire to help more people in a time of their lives when they really, really did need help. So that's how it started. That's how it all started. I can skip over the development parts and tell you like what's happened since we started, but that's kind of our origin story.
Well, you started talking about one of the questions that were meant for later in the episode, but let's get right into it. So some like you said, oh, it must be great to be married to a doctor. All the, people you get
Right.
the eventual income and some social status, right, that people see and but
Right.
but like you feel like you might be living in the shadow of the spouse, all right? Or you're like a supportive character or what do they say in video games? And
Yeah.
a non-playable character,
Not
right?
non-playable character, right.
So what are some of the other negatives that right? Because this is a physician audience, so we have,
Right.
almost all of them are physicians. Some of them are my
Right.
neighbors that are kind enough to listen. I'm not sure why, because it doesn't relate to what they do, so thank you for listening. But, for most of them, they are physicians, so they
Mhm.
might not hear this perspective, and I think it's good for us to hear it, right? So what are some of the
Right.
negatives of being a physician spouse. Now we're saying it's a non-physician spouse, right? Because
Right.
physician
Right.
couples are completely
Totally
different,
different.
and
Yeah.
we've actually covered that in an earlier episode. But for
Mhm.
the physician non-physician couple, what are some of the other negatives?
Yeah, so, we touched on it a little bit before. I think, one of the first is the stereotype from your friends, families, neighbors, that being married to a doctor is the holy grail. Doctor spouses do a really good job of keeping any complaints or unhappiness inside because of the misperception. They don't want to seem ungrateful for their circumstances. They are comfortable. They live in a nice house. There's on the outside it doesn't seem there's anything to be ungrateful for. So no one wants to put that out into the world. Um, but when you've been dismissed enough times, I think, because of these comments, like at least you're married to a doctor, then you kind of learn to keep quiet. So that part is kind of tough, because you really have to find another physician spouse or somebody who has a physician in their family, that understands what you're going through if you have anything that you need to talk about. So that's one thing. Um, the other is I'd say that um, we're in relationships where the patient comes first and we will always come second. So, if you've ever been a patient in need of a doctor, then you can appreciate that. But it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, especially when you miss your spouse or you have to move for training and you have no family or friends around you. They're gone for 80 plus hours a week, and you just really need them to be there. So that's tough sometimes. And then I'd say finally, I think it's really all the sacrifices individually that don't seem like a big deal. Like if you take them individually, they don't seem like a big deal, like doing things alone all the time or being responsible for the majority of the household, happenings or moving into a new city and not knowing anyone. But add all those little things together, along with not being able to talk about it and have any like understanding of it and then always coming in second instead of first, which is a good thing for patients. But um, it
It
can
sounds
become
like
pretty,
it's the incongruity also of the sacrifice. It's like
yeah,
it's like the physician is doing all these things for their career, for their patients, um, and then the spouse has to make all these sacrifices for the physician spouse, but does the physician spouse is maybe making sacrifice for the career and the patients, but not for the spouse. Like,
right.
what have you done? What sacrifices have you made for me? You've made all
Right.
these things, you worked hard, you work late at night, you miss out on sleep, you miss out on kids' activities, you miss out on date night for your career and for your patients. But what did you miss out on so that I could do?
Right. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we signed up for it, right? I mean, I knew what I was getting into when we no, so I say I
It
knew what I
doesn't
was
make it
getting into,
suck
but I
less.
don't, yeah, I don't say that I knew exactly what I was getting into, but yeah, it doesn't make it suck any less.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is an incongruity. And it's not that, like I said, we're a pretty brave and strong bunch. So it's not like the woe is me with any of us. We love supporting our spouses, and it's part of, I think maybe physicians naturally gravitate to someone who can support them like this. And but it does after a while. I think all of those things add together become pretty tiring, and resentment can kind of set in pretty quickly.
Yeah, I've heard that R word, that can be the relationship killer,
Yeah,
the resentment. It
yeah,
sneaks
it
in
really
there and
can.
it poisons everything.
It really
Um,
does.
so then what would you say to the physicians who work hard all day, right? All shift, overnight shift, daytime shift, whatever, long shift, intense shift, something, and they
Hmm.
get home and there's still work to be done at home, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And they crash.
Yeah,
And they crash. Not
yeah,
and but not when it's like a one-off phenomenon, right? Like some
right,
days are just super hard and like I get it. But let's say it's like a
right.
regular
Regular
phenomenon.
thing.
And it might
Yeah.
be someone who has like a pretty intense like emergency medicine.
Hmm.
Pretty intense every shift. I mean, you might have a quiet overnight every so often, but by and
Right.
large, it's intense every time. Or you're doing an outpatient where just like you just tons of patients over and over, or a
Hmm.
big surgery day with a complicated
Hmm.
surgery, and maybe
Hmm.
the outcomes are tenuous because you're dealing with a patient population that is pretty sick to begin with.
Right.
So they and either emotionally draining, whatever, but it's on the
Hmm.
regular.
Hmm.
And then they crash
Yeah.
and they're of no help to the spouse. So what would you
Yeah.
say to that position?
Yeah. So, I mean, first, I want to say we get it. What doctors do all day or all night, depending on shift work, or, I mean, it's mentally exhausting. I think this is where communication and compromise comes in, though. They need to let us know how they feel, but we need to also really be okay with letting them know how we feel about it. Then you can come to an agreement. Like, for example, I like to plan. I'm a big planner. Planning's my jam. So, I know that my husband, when he comes home from a long day, he doesn't have the capacity to hear about my plans right away. Like, that's just too much for him. That's overwhelming. He needs to crash. He needs to relax. I need to get it off my chest. So I say something to him like, can we talk in the morning, or can we table this? Or I have some plans. Can we do this? But once there's an understanding, I think that if there's not an understanding about how you're going to handle it, maybe you relax for 20 minutes, or you relax for an hour, and I'll make dinner, but you do the dishes. Or, maybe we take turns helping the kids get a bath, or maybe we do this where the spouse has been home all day, or the spouse has also been at work. So the spouse is tired too. Um, but if you don't have communication and compromise, then resentment builds, because if they crash too hard, they crash too often, then their spouse will feel like they're being taken advantage of. And that's just not fair.
And I'm going to throw in maybe something needs to change professionally so that it's
Absolutely.
not happening all the time, right?
Absolutely.
Because it
You
doesn't
know,
it doesn't work. It's not happening in a vacuum.
yeah, that's a great point. I've talked to physician spouses who, their spouse wasn't getting home from work because they were charting so late. So the deal was they would chart at home after 8 at night, from 8 to 9, or however long it took them to chart. They would chart that long, later, after they've been with the family. There's been family time, the kids are in bed, and then they do that. So there's compromises to be made at that there too. But yeah, I mean, I agree. If there's something happening at work and it's and it's affecting your personal home life like that, then, that's not good for anyone.
And if you are staying at late at work charting, you got to check out two of my past episodes where we've talked about charting, how to do it more efficiently. So go check it out.
Yeah.
Both of the people on those episodes are charting coaches. So if you need extra help,
Cool.
check. Okay, sorry, enough plugging my own
Yeah,
podcast.
and I will say, I'll plug your podcast too then. I'll say, the spouses listen to those and and send them off to your spouse and let them hear it. So,
Yes, yes, and
yeah.
actually, to all of your followers, make
Yeah.
sure your spouse listens to my podcast. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, okay. So you recently had a post, and that's
Mhm.
what got us to work together on this
Yeah.
episode.
Mhm.
That was the 6 traits doctors need to be a great spouse. Because most
Mhm.
of your posts are for the spouse, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
more oriented for the spouse. They're not
Mhm.
oriented to the physician. But this one,
Mhm.
um, spoke to me because I was the audience. So
Yeah.
so what are those 6 traits doctors need to be a great spouse?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. We do talk a lot about how, because we're a whole community of physician spouses and partners, we talk a lot about what we can do, but it's not all on us, right? Because I think another way to fall in the support role that is, if we think that it's our own responsibility to make things run smoothly and we're the only ones that can do it and are responsible for it, then resentment builds and we fall in the support role, and that's not good for anybody. So um, well, what I like to start off by talking about, when we talk about the traits doctors need to be a great spouse, is really two traits together, which is appreciation and gratitude, because it really sets the foundation for a healthy relationship. And who doesn't like to feel appreciated and supported and grateful for? So, what that really means, though, is that, there aren't large sacrifices that are completely obvious, like the sacrifices that physicians make in order to become physicians. We've talked about the little sacrifices that we make. Um, but just showing and talking to your physician spouse about these small sacrifices and how much you appreciate them. And, I know that the fact that I stayed at home with the kids has enabled my husband to do other things at home, like hobbies. He's a woodworker. So, like hobbies, in order to unwind and keep his mind off of what was going on at work. So I bear the brunt of the responsibility for the kids because I know it's good for his wellness, and it might help prevent any worsening feelings about burnout for him. So I think him showing me appreciation for doing that and acknowledging that I do that, even just by, resetting by when he walks in the door, just so he's in a good mood because he knows I've had a bad day. Um, I'm looking forward to seeing him when he gets home from work. And the kids are looking forward to seeing him. So make it a happy entry when you're coming home. Um, Go ahead.
Whittle something for me. If you're going to be into
Right, right.
woodworking, whittle
Right.
something for me.
Little something, right, exactly. That is his love language. He's got quite a few. I have quite a few pieces of furniture in my house
Oh
because
wow.
he does love doing that. So yeah, just be aware of their emotions, let them know how much you appreciate them, and if they're feeling tired or overwhelmed by responsibilities, don't assume that they know how much you care. Tell them, show them how much you care, because everybody likes to hear that they're appreciated.
So verbally, we need to verbally, and then I would also add in the middle of the day. Send an email in the middle of the day.
Yes,
Send
I
a
love
text in
it.
between
Yes.
patients. You're sitting on the toilet and you have your phone in your hand. Send a text, send an email. Like there are windows there. I know our shifts are really busy and we're seeing patients back to back. And this patient was late and this patient was added on. And this patient needs a call back. This patient needs a refill. But there are these quiet moments every so often during the day, and take those, you know, intermittently to send
Yes.
a little love. It goes a long way. And
Oh
maybe
my gosh,
sometimes
you are
flowers
so right.
and sometimes
Flowers.
furniture.
Yeah, those are all fabulous
Yeah.
things. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that idea. That's so great. So
Oh,
yeah, so go ahead.
no, no, no. I was going to say what are some
Yeah.
other traits?
So, we talked about communication when we talked about, coming home and crashing and things like that. So communication's huge, doctor spouses and partners, we do a lot of waiting. We do a lot of working around schedules. You may see a lot of frustration for us if there is lack of communication. So just be understanding. Are you going to be late for dinner? Shoot them a text. Are you stuck with the patient? Shoot them a text. Um, and I guess that doesn't really only matter when it comes to schedules. We worry a lot about our spouse's mental well-being. With physician suicides rates twice that of the general population. We worry about them. So we worry about how poor patient outcomes affect our spouses. We worry about long hours. We worry about hard cases. We worry about burnout. We worry about bureaucracy. Um, we worry about how all of this affects our loved ones. So it all adds up, and we see the results at home. I could talk forever about that and how how we support our spouses at home, but if we see them feeling this way and we ask about it, then they hold it in, then the doctors, physicians hold it in, then it only makes us worry more.
Okay, so
So
you want us to open up,
yeah,
right? You do want us
yeah,
to tell you.
yeah, we
Okay, because
do.
it's am I just like vomiting my burdens on you and
No.
now, weighing you down? Because sometimes it does feel that way. Like I'm just now you've got something on your mind that I could have kept to myself and not,
Yeah.
weighed
You
you
know,
down
I'm
with.
I'm not gonna lie, we carry that stress too, but it's a different like, we do worry about you. So it's better to communicate because we can see it happening. We can see it when you're sad, we can see it when you're stressed, we can see it when you're tired. So it's better to communicate that than leave us guessing, you know, um, because we're worried. It's scary sometimes when you see statistics and, you just don't want that to be your spouse or your
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess that kind of goes both ways with communication, but, you know, really when you come home, then listen to understand. So so after a long day of listening to patients' wants and needs, we get it. We understand that it may be difficult to sit and hear one more person tell you how they feel. But
But
believe
listen,
me
as
when
I
I
mean, from a physician perspective, as long as you're able to communicate it concisely,
mm,
because a lot of the
oh, that's a great
frustration
perspective.
a lot of the frustration that comes with communicating with patients is that, like, they're often very circuitous about their experience
Mhm.
and nebulous about their symptoms. I mean, some of them come in and it's like straight as an arrow and it's like, awesome. I know exactly what you have. I can help you. And some of them it's like, I I don't know where this is like. So the hard part is like pulling the information out of them to try and get it in some type of, and so if you can come at us with like something a little like straightforward, and concrete, and how can I help you? And let's do this. Then like
That's
that's
great.
yeah, we can fix this problem. I can fix this problem. Especially
Yeah,
if we had a day of a bunch of people that like I may not have helped them. Or at least I didn't feel
right,
like often we help them
right.
more than we realize, but I didn't feel like I
Yeah,
helped them. So if I can help you,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's a great perspective because, sometimes we want to talk too. We haven't been talking
right.
as an adult all day, and
Right.
sometimes we just want
Okay.
to
So it's not
talk.
all problem solving. It's
So,
not
yeah,
okay.
it's no,
Okay. I
absolutely not. By
sometimes
all
forget
means,
that.
do
I
not try
sometimes
to
forget
solve the
this. Yeah.
problem. Sometimes we just need to vent. So I think there's probably like some compromise in there. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'm just
Also
gonna
make that
vent.
clear. Then make that
Yeah.
clear. Make that
Okay,
clear. Like,
that's great.
okay, I don't want you to solve my problem. I just need to vent. I just need to vent.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now
Yeah.
I know my job here.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. That's great perspective. Yeah, because I mean, actually, a lot of times physician spouses and partners feel bad, like even bringing up how they feel because everything just seems menial when you talk to somebody that's been dealing with life or death all day or like been, healing someone all day and you're like,
I treat
okay, I just
earwax
really
and
want
nosebleeds, so I'm
to
not really treating, Doctor
nah,
Pimple Popper.
Well, if they do actually tell you how they feel, then they've already run it through the test of whether or not they should, and they've already run it through the test in their mind of whether or not they should bring it up to you. So it's important enough that they need you to hear them out. So put your phone down, listen to
Yeah.
understand, ask the probing questions for you to better understand, but don't try to solve the problems. Like I said, sometimes just need to vent.
Unless that problem is, okay, I can pick them up at soccer tomorrow. And then
Right.
do it.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just get it done. Right. Right.
Okay. Okay. Or any other traits that that doctors need to be a great spouse that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah. So there's a couple. So this next one is pretty big because if it doesn't happen, then this is one way spouses, physician spouses, and partners can get stuck in playing the support role, and that's really encouragement. So we get busy taking care of everyone else that we forget to take care of ourselves. So encourage them to go out and do something fabulous, take responsibility for household chores, the kids, whatever, and tell them to go out with friends, encourage them to go learn something they've always wanted to, pursue a passion. This will really breathe more life into your relationship because you're helping them fuel their happiness and also their confidence. So,
And to be
so
clear,
that
it's what they want to do, not what you want
right,
them to do. This is not
exactly.
another opportunity to be a controlling spouse. This is like figure out what they
Yes.
want to do, not what you want to do. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, so I'd say last but not least is show some compassion. So spouses and partners of physicians may have to move away from friends. I didn't have to, but they may have to move away from friends, family, community, even careers that they really enjoyed for training, or even when physicians are done with training. Sometimes shift work in the ER can be exhausting for the ones that stay at home, and becomes kind of the default parent, as as I would say. Um, so there are plenty of things that aren't being that aren't fabulous about being married to a physician. So just show some compassion. You can tell them you love them. You can tell them you appreciate them all day long. But at the end of the day, try to put yourself in their shoes and understand their perspective, and really acknowledge where they're coming from.
All right. Well, one final question before we wrap up, and this is your opportunity to throw your own physician husband under the bus. So, as the spouse of a physician, and my wife always gets on me about this. This was actually her question. This was not my question. So when your spouse gets sick, what's he like?
uh,
What's he like? Do doctors really make bad patients?
dare I ask what your wife says first, or do
Yeah.
I tell you
Yeah.
what I?
Yeah, because I don't like everybody's well, first, I always think everybody's fine. I never think anybody's like actually sick.
Mhm.
And especially myself. Like everything's always nothing except with COVID. It was more like, oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, must be COVID. Oh, I got a runny nose. Oh, it must be COVID. Oh, my
Right.
back hurts. It must be like everything became COVID during COVID. But otherwise, like, I had a bump on my back for a long time. And she was like, Get that checked out." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm sure it's nothing." Those tips. Everything, I'm sure it's nothing. Um,
Yeah.
so that's her perspective,
Okay. All
or
right. So
reality,
yeah.
actually.
Yeah, I guess perception's reality, right? So yeah, I get so not to throw him under the bus, but when he does get a cold, I will say everyone in the house feels it. But you know, that's just a simple cold. So but that being said, he's much like you. Like he recently had a foot issue and it went months and months without him dealing with it. And he finally went to the specialist and his Achilles was torn.
Oh my god.
Months, right. So he did follow the doctor's orders on that one. So I guess I truly say that it depends on the situation, but
Yeah.
for some reason those colds hit hard in this house. So yeah.
I had a similar incident where, I was at a we were at a neighbor's party,
Mhm.
outdoors, a
Mhm.
neighbor's party, and talking to one of my neighbors, turns out he's got plantar fasciitis. So I was like, "Why are you not running in the race?" Because we have an annual Thanksgiving Day race in the
Mhm.
neighborhood. It's like, "Oh, I got plantar fasciitis. That's why I couldn't run in this other race." Like, and I was like, I looked it up. I was like, Oh, that's why my feet hurt in the morning. That's why I can't run. That's why, like, when I'm on my bike, like, for a while, like, I can't walk for a few days. I've got plantar fasciitis. I hadn't been to the doctor. It took talking to a friend at a party to realize that I had this, like,
That's something.
a foot disorder that really should be
S
looked after, so
so did you go to the doctor or did you try to do it yourself?
no, I did it myself. I texted one
Yeah.
of my friends who's an orthopedic
Yeah.
surgeon. I'm like, "What do I do
Yeah.
for plantar
Yeah.
fasciitis?" Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah, makes
it's I
sense.
mean, the thing is we have access to all
Right.
these specialists. Like when,
Right.
one of my kids gets poked in the eye, I I text a pediatric ophthalmologist at like a academic center, like it's
Right.
we have the privilege of having easy access to a lot of different specialists. So it allows us to, yes, meet
Wait,
bad
so
patients.
you call someone when your kid gets poked in the eye? I'm kidding.
Well, no,
My
not poked in
husband
the
is
eye. It was more
right.
like
No, I meant like it usually takes like bleeding from the eyes or like
yes.
it usually is like something, something far, far worse. Like you said,
No,
my husband thinks no one's ever sick.
yes.
So, and
That's the
usually
thing.
my
He sees
response
the
to my
sickest of the
kids,
sick every
right,
day, every day,
right,
every day, and
right,
people who are not
right.
so sick. So yes,
Exactly.
we
Exactly.
are. Yes, I think we'd get along very well. We should next
I
when
think
I'm
so
in
too.
St. Louis, we should hang out.
Absolutely. That would be fun. We'd enjoy
Okay,
that.
so where can people find the MedCommons, and where can people find you online if they want to follow you, connect with you?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook at the MedCommons, Instagram at the MedCommons. I'm on LinkedIn, the MedCommons, but also Elizabeth Landry on LinkedIn. If somebody needs to get a hold of me or email me, they can email hello at the MedCommons or fill out a contact form at themedcommons.com and we'll get back to them.
Fantastic. Elizabeth
Great.
Landry, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
That was Dr. Bradley Block at the Physician's Guide to Doctoring. He can be found at physiciansguidetodoctoring.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a question for a previous guest or have an idea for a future episode, send a comment on the webpage. Also, please be sure to leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. We'll see you next time on the Physician's Guide to Doctoring.